guys, welcome back to the Wisconsin Files. So today we are diving into some more UFO stuff, and I have a lot to unpack with you guys. So we are going to be discussing things that went down all the way in 1897 here, and this is going to be a series on the channel. All this UFO content is so abundant and vast. I am going to need a whole series to go through all the things that I've been discovering and things that are currently going on, like right now, is in like maybe a month or two ago, I think, in early June in Waukesha. Yeah, so much. People are sending me in videos. You guys, I'm seeing some crazy stuff and I'm so excited to share it with you all. So let's get into that. Hello friends, and welcome back to another episode of UFOs in Wisconsin. So today we're going to be actually talking about two different cases. One is from the turn of the century, the late 1890s, and it's just to kind of give us a general idea of how long the settlers of Wisconsin have been seeing these UFOs in the sky. I'm not even touching on the Native American legends that are here. I mean, there are so many. That's for its own video. And the next case is about, I guess, Wisconsin's very own Roswell incident. Now, the story comes from a journalist who may not have been as credible as I would like, but the story kind of goes along with other sightings in the area around the exact same time. So I figured it was worth mentioning, and I was going to just let you guys be the judge. Anyways, this story is from a book called UFO Wisconsin, a Progress Report by a gentleman named Noah Voss, and it goes into detail about Warren Smith's encounter with the Men in Black after contacting a person who witnessed a UFO crash and actually collected a piece of material from this UFO. And this story happens to take place around the same time that other people have witnessed UFOs. So I thought it was pretty neat, and it was fun. So those are the cases that I'm bringing to you guys today. Again, I'm just letting you all draw your own conclusion. It's all in good fun. So let's get into it. One of the first reported UFO sightings in Wisconsin was in La Crosse in 1897. Hundreds of people saw a cigar-shaped UFO with colorful lights. Now, at the time, the sighting would be chalked up to be nothing more than an airship or a hot air balloon. But Wisconsin wasn't the only place where these sightings were taking place. All across the Midwest and even across the country, people were seeing these UFOs. At the time, at least here in Wisconsin, they believed that the Ringling Brothers Circus was responsible, and the matter was easily dismissed. But the circus would never corroborate these claims, and why is it that the entire country was witnessing these objects, some on the same day but thousands of miles apart, all throughout 1897? Why was it that the people witnessing these events claimed that this was different than an air balloon, which most were familiar with? So in 1897, people were already familiar with hot air balloons. There was activity a bit up in the sky, those romantic balloon rides, right? But these guys were pretty convinced that they had never seen something like this before. They were very, very certain that this was different. I think they just summed it up to be the Ringling Brothers, because that was kind of the easiest thing to do. I mean, they don't really know what they're dealing with, so natural human reaction is to find something logical to blame it on, and that's what they did. But again, there was plenty of other sightings that were going on around the same time that could not possibly have been the circus. That unless there was a circus popping off in every single, and I don't think that was the case. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's pretty intense. And I do, like I said before, I just love the idea that even way back then, people were seeing something up in those skies. There was something going on up there. What it was, well, I don't know. UFO Wisconsin, a Progress Report written by Noah Voss, details an allegedly true account about a Roswell-type incident taking place right here in Wisconsin in 1968. More than 24 people in the Madison area reported seeing what they described as big as a hot air balloon, a darkish gray in color, and they would watch as the craft descended and crash-landed on Burge Farm. What followed was a mystery that still leaves people baffled today. According to the story, the farmer who owned the property recovered an odd piece of metal from the crash. He then got in contact with an investigative journalist. This journalist was Warren Smith. And so Mr. Smith arranged to stay at the local Holiday Inn, and he came to the farmer's home where he collected the eyewitness accounts and was even given the peculiar piece of metal.
farmer would receive a bizarre visit from two men who showed up to the farm claiming to be fertilizer salesmen. They acted strangely, nosing about the property and asking intrusive questions. This was more than enough to put the farmer on edge. The situation was already tense considering the night of the UFO crash, there was already a sheriff waiting on his property, and the story was making a buzz. It was causing unwanted attention. After the supposed salesman left, for obvious reasons, he became increasingly paranoid.
Guys, let's get into the main story today. So today we're gonna really focus on a Roswell type incident that went down in Madison, Wisconsin in 1968. Yeah, you heard me right, a Roswell type incident. It may not have garnered international attention, but it did get the attention of a couple of people that we're gonna talk about right now. Now, Warren Billy Smith, whether or not he is credible, did he embellish his stories? Were these, tall tales out? Was he telling tales out of school? We don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons. I guess it's almost like, with the paranormal. It's like, do you trust Ed and Lorraine Warren? It's funny that, there's Warren involved in both that. Anyways, so there's a crash on a night, a summertime night in 1968, and this unidentified flying object crash lands into Burge Farm around the Stoughton area, which is Madison, and this farmer is on his way home as he's witnessing this crash, and as he gets to his farm, there's already a sheriff there, and there's I guess 24 people that have already witnessed this take place. But the farmer is able to take a piece of metal from this crash. And this piece of metal is really going to bring them some trouble. And let me tell you why. So, the farmer decides to get in touch with an investigative journalist who is very familiar with the UFOs, Mr. Warren Billy Smith. So, Mr. Smith does his, he does his job. He comes out and stays at this Holiday Inn in the area, and he goes to visit with the farmer, and he's gathering stories and listening to what had happened this night. And eventually, the farmer decides to give Mr. Smith this piece of metal. And so he takes it, and he goes back to his hotel room. Well, within a day or something, maybe, because Mr. Smith is still staying in the area at the hotel to try to investigate and get, all the leads on this story and get everything as accurate as possible. Well, while he is off doing his job researching, these two fertilizer salesmen kind of show up at the farm, and they're like, hey, I heard there was this UFO crash, and they're not your typical salesmen. They weren't carrying fertilizer or anything, and they were dressed in all black, and all they were doing is really being authoritative and asking some very serious, stern questions, which put the farmer on edge. And they started asking him if he had anything left over from that crash, as if maybe they knew he had taken a piece of metal and they wanted it back. Well, this was enough to make that farmer go like, holy shit, this is serious. This is happening. And he panics, and he calls Mr. Smith, and he tells Mr. Smith that he needs to come back to his farm and they need to talk right away. I think because he's scared. He doesn't want to say over the phone yeah, I need that piece of metal back. You know that piece of metal that I took from that really mysterious crash that went down on my farm the other night? Yeah, well, now there's these two creepy dudes that I think are a part of the FBI or something, and I'm really scared. So, and I don't think you should die for it, so maybe bring it back. Of course he's not going to want to say that because, we all know that they're always listening, they can hear everything. We know this.
Internally recalling that he gave the object to Mr. Warren Smith, he knew that the two salesmen were most likely after the journalist, and so he called him immediately, fearing that he too would be at risk. Requesting to speak with Warren in person versus over the telephone, the two met up, and before Mr. Smith left his hotel room, he was really anxious at this point as well, and he didn't want to risk his life for this. So he decided to hide the piece of metal inside of the television set, and he headed off to his arranged meeting with the farmer. He would also ask that the hotel staff keep a watch over his room. Guess what happened? While the journalist was long gone, a hotel staffer witnessed two gentlemen described awfully similar to the two men who showed up to the farm. Seems like an awful lot of seriousness for an incident that was considered to be, nothing by officials at the time. Mysterious agents showing up at the doors involved sure doesn't seem like nothing. So as Warren was headed back to his hotel room to retrieve the object to return it to the farmer, he was greeted by guess who? Yep, that's correct, the two fertilizer salesmen. So when Mr. Smith demanded to know what they were doing, he was told that he had something that they wanted. And it was clear that they were not leaving without it. So Mr. Smith reluctantly gave in, and when the journalist requested for their agency's identification, they would respond with, "Which agency? Say one, and we'll produce the proper ID."
Mr. Smith decides like he's gonna do this crazy ordeal to hide this piece of metal because now he can hear panic in the farmer's voice, but he doesn't really know what's going on. So he's been carrying this metal with him the whole time, and so he's like, okay, click, I'm gonna need to hide this. I don't want it on me anymore, and I don't want to, in case they come for me, I don't have it on me. So he goes about this crazy way by ripping his TV apart in the hotel room and hiding this piece of metal inside the TV like this, like it's, a crime scene movie or something out of a TV show. And yeah, so it gets intense. So Mr. Smith goes to the farmer, when they're talking, the farmer finally, he's relaying the message and he's, informing him and letting him know, and then he's like, oh, shit, that's not good, and I think at this point it's setting in, oh my god, I just left that metal in my hotel room. What the hell? It's all hitting. And it's so intense, I love it. Anyways, so now Mr. Smith is gunning it for the hotel. He's like, okay, now I need to get this metal back to him reluctantly, but it clearly needs to get out of my possession. He's pulling into the house, and he had told staff too. He also told the hotel staff, hey, can you kind of keep an eye on my room? Just because, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. And the staff immediately flag him down. They're like, hey, there are two dudes up in your room right now. And he was like, what? Or they weren't in his room. They were looking for him at this point. But obviously now you know, okay? He goes up to his room, opens the door. Surprise! It's the men in black. Oh, just joking. They're fertilizer salesmen. So the fertilizer salesmen are sitting there like, hey, Mr. Smith, think you kind of got something, don't you? You got something that's burdening you, Something that you might want to, give back to somebody, and he's just kind of like poking and prodding, I don't know what you talking about, trying to act oblivious and stuff, and they know you because Mr. Smith asks them what agency do you work for, what, can I see some ID or something, and they were like, well, tell us what agency, and we'll provide you with the right identification. And I guess that was enough to put him on edge, where he's just like, you know what? This is not worth me dying. And he rips the TV set apart, hands them the piece of metal, even though he doesn't want to. And I think after some, there was a good period of probably some vague threats, And then he realizes that this is more than what he has bargained for here at this point. And now he knows he can't give it back to the farmer, and so he reluctantly hands it over to these men, the fertilizer salesmen. So he hands it over to them, and they leave. They take off, and Mr. Smith is just kind of left there dumbfounded as to just what the hell happened. Who were these guys? Where did they come from? And they just bombard his hotel room yo, MIB, what's up, boys? No, you got that piece of metal from that UFO crash. Hand it over.
So quickly thinking as the two men got into their vehicle to leave, Mr. Smith wrote down their license plate number, and afterwards, he was able to get in touch with a friend of his who could track down that plate number, and I'm sure you can guess just where this is headed, right? That plate number was traced back to a person who was a known affiliate with the CIA. Wow, didn't see that one coming, right? Of course they were involved. It was a UFO crash, and this wouldn't even be the last sighting. So this continues to this very day. People still report seeing something that they can't explain in the Wisconsin skylines. Just what's going on out there, I don't know. But thank you guys so much for listening, and I will catch you in the next video.
Who? Do you trust the government? Do you? Yeah, that's what I thought. Especially when it comes to this kind of stuff. We know they're secretive. They know they're secretive. They know that we know they're secretive. This is known. It's just whether or not, like, was Mr. Smith credible? Was he reliable? I'll leave that up to everybody else. I leave everything up to everybody's interpretations because I feel like I like to be just 100% bias-free and completely open-minded. I want to believe, and I want to hear everybody's experiences. I so much enjoy this. I absolutely love the idea that these things are going on around us every day. Thank you guys so much for watching me, and I will catch you guys next time.